Hey guys, this is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam. Another beautiful summer night here in the city. Before I dive into this video, I had a question pop in mind yesterday about whether you guys think that the camera quality is crappy in this channel. I've been using my iPhone 11 now for, what is it, 13? iPhone 13 for the past couple of years, and sometimes I notice when I rewatch on YouTube that the quality is a little bit grainy. Do you guys think it makes a difference? Let me know in the comments, and I'll consider doing a little upgrade. And now on to the topic of today's video, which is the topic of mental barriers. Now, I had done a separate video a couple of days ago on opinions that I never really published. And I'm not going to publish it, so I'm just going to include the main gist of the whole opinion-based use of the mind in this one. And maybe it's a good place to start, because see, in a video from last week I was mentioning how what our brain creates from us during our developmental years is a kind of functional delusion. The delusion is functional in the sense that it's meant to make us navigate three-dimensional reality, give us the ability to plan, to consider options and things of this kind. So it's functional in that sense. It's not totally dysfunctional or unwanted for that matter. But it is a delusion in the sense that in engaging in this activity, or rather the part of our mind that engages in weighing options and creating opinions for which it may or may not have the right basis, is a part of the mind that starts to believe that it can gather enough information to actually make a good judgment call about reality. And as opposed to just helping to navigate practical matters. And opinions are probably the lowest form of use of the mind that we could think of. It's due to the incompleteness of the data that we can gather with our senses. It's due to the fact that our thinking is completely polluted both by memes or mimetic social-based information that's passed down over generations, and sometimes passed down very implicitly, right? Not overtly, but very, the thing that nobody talks about but everyone knows shouldn't be done type of thing. And not least of all, our own traumas, and also our emotional biases. So it's very likely that the opinions that we hold with stronger conviction are the ones that, if proven wrong, would make our emotions flare up pretty strongly, right? So all these things make it so that opinions are really quite cheap, low level level of intelligence, right? So it's not something that we want to rely upon very strongly. And by the way, this does not apply to practical matters such as stopping when you see a red light, right? That's not an opinion. That's a perceptual based fact. I would rather say that opinions are those things that are not happening in the here and now, and which consist of somewhat complex, socially constructed topics, things of the like. Now, I went on in that video to also explain that is not even the worst part of the opinion-based mechanism of the mind. The worst part about it is that that regardless how accurate an opinion may be, we are still making use of a part of our mind that is very constricted in its perceptual capacities. And that in order to hold an opinion or a positionality on a topic, we have to, by necessity, limit our own mind. We have to constrain the possibilities that the mind is ready to consider. And we also have to constrain the possibilities that the mind is ready to be at peace with. And all of that starts to create a mind that begins to block realities off so that it can hold its positionalities around things. In blocking those realities off, it blocks off perception of things that don't match with the opinions that it holds. And by doing so, it splits itself. So the mind literally blocks and splits itself in doing that kind of exercise. So we end up living in a very small sandbox. And it's a sandbox of that peculiar type in which ostriches sink their head. Because it's a sandbox that is created to give us the comfortable blanket of positionality, and which appears to be fending off reality, but in reality is only veiling reality. And hence the title of today's video, which is that there are no barriers, only veils, applies perfectly to this line of thinking, because very often we believe that we are facing barriers in our life that we need to surmount. And this is a classic in spirituality. It's a classic trap of grappling with the problems of the ego, trying to have them resolved, and by that same token, granting them credence, giving them validity as something that represents reality accurately. Okay, so that by the time we are holding an opinion, and it might be a negative opinion that we want to now deal with, such as I'm not able to start a business, for example, or I'm not able to travel by myself, things of that kind. By the time we start to grapple with that thought or that belief, we've already granted it credence. The grappling grants it credence as something that is there to contend with. And it is one of the cleverest tricks of the ego to make us believe that our fears are in fact valid and true. I need to open the door or the cat will keep mowing the whole video through. Now, if we then look at the mechanism of opinion creation as nothing other than trying to fend off reality through apparent barriers that are actual barriers to perception, then logic would dictate that if we want to eliminate those barriers, then the way to do it would be an exercise of clarification. So in yoga or in meditation, we do not grapple with problems. And we do not grapple with the ego or the sense of self. The entire endeavor is to clarify what those apparent barriers are made of, so that they are realized as veils instead of barriers. They look like barriers when you see them out of the corner of your eye, and they typically come with a big warning sign of "Don't look here." Right? I was talking with someone on Saturday, and I had this little quip where I said, well, the ego and your fear-based beliefs are covered by shame and fear, and they when you start to look at them, the first thing that appears in sight is some lunatic that has its hand on the nuclear launch button, and is saying to you, "Do not look at me. Don't look here. If you look here, I'll push the button. I swear to God, I'll push it. I'll blow both of us up. Right? Don't look here." And you have to call that bluff. And in calling the bluff, you start to come in touch with discomfort, And in coming in touch with discomfort, you realize that there was nothing real behind the discomfort other than just discomfort. But shame covers that discomfort very well. In fact, you could describe shame as fear of fear, something that doesn't even dare to look at itself. And so granting credence to the barriers in our mind that were erected as protection walls is what gets us entangled with those problems of the mind. And engaging in the work of clarifying the apparent barriers reveals them to be only veils. Now, that revelation is a positive thing, or let's say makes the work easier in the sense that you start to see through the apparent barriers of your mind. But it is also very challenging because once you realize they were only veils, you come to realize that the barrier that you had set up, the supposed barrier that you had set up to protect yourself, was never a barrier, right? So you have to contend with the fact that the reality that you walled off was never really walled off. It was only suppressed or repressed. It was only made subconscious. You only veiled it from your conscious perception. And now you, in order to see through the barrier and break through and live a richer life, you have to accept the fact that it was never really a barrier. You've always only ever been naked in the face of reality. But your mind created this illusion of a fortress, which was made of smoke. It was made of suppression and repression, right? It was made of veiling things rather than actually walling them off. And that's a bitter pill to swallow, and hence the fear. That's what the fear is actually of, is of the realization that despite what your cozy mind and its convictions and its opinions and its strongly held beliefs and principles might want to tell you about how secure you are for sticking to your guns and to the things that you believe in, all the while, that was only really an exercise in your mind. The reality never cared about those veils of yours, which is why you kept bumping into it in rather painful ways. So in a sense, it's an exercise in really actually growing up to realize that that you are naked in front of life, that there's nothing you can do about it other than kind of man up or grow up, if we want to be a little bit more gender neutral about the whole thing. And that's a very bitter pill to swallow, because the entire edifice of the ego is erected to veil that reality and to create little narcissistic tactics and strategies on how to deal with the other, and narcissistic or avoidant tactics to suppress and repress and push under our threshold of perception everything that we're not ready to contend with and deal with. So there you have it. That's today's video, is this notion that there are no barriers in the mind, only veils that can be seen through the tools of yoga and meditation. And of course the biggest one being the egoic self, or the sense of self in its own right. Very curious as usual what you guys make of the topic, and as always, if you think that these videos are helpful and that they might help others, then your liking, sharing and subscribing to the channel makes me super happy and makes the content more available out there. Just push one of those buttons over there and help us out, and I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. Thanks for listening. Cheerio.